Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, October 2nd. This is your daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr. The first Big Ten game of the season is expected to kick off exactly 3 weeks from tonight. We don't know exactly who's going to play on that first Friday night, but the Big Ten is expected to have someone play on that first Friday night. So 3 weeks, not too bad. First football Saturday of the Big Ten season, 22 days away. The game against Michigan, 71 days away. And those Wolverines are going to be the topic of today's show, actually. This has been a difficult year for everyone, and you're seeing all sorts of unusual stuff happening in a lot of different college football programs. But things just seem a little, off right now in Ann Arbor. Buckeye Scoop insider Bill Greene is my guest this morning to try and help me make sense of things in Jim Harbaugh's program right now. Bill, there are a lot of things that, taken individually can be dismissed as one-off flukes or the product of the crazy year. But it is, to me, objectively strange that a head football coach at a major program like Michigan has a contract that runs out after the 2021 season. What the heck is going on with Jim Harbaugh's contract?
Yeah, that makes no sense. It was supposed to be all done and signed in spring. And then we were told that it was looking like May or June. And it just hasn't happened. And it's unheard of for people that don't follow recruiting that closely. I mean, you just don't let a coach that you like, you don't let him get within a year of his contract expiring. You really shouldn't let it get within 2 or 3 years. You got a problem recruiting at that point, and people are using it against Michigan. You've got a coach that, fair or not, has a reputation as a jerk. And then this contract gets within 1 year. They can't beat Ohio State. And there's been so much talk of him going back to the NFL. And at this point, there are questions. There are questions from players on that team. There are questions from on that staff. I have to think either Harbaugh doesn't want them right now or doesn't know if he does, or they don't know if they want him right now. So there's something wrong. This contract should not be this close. And players and recruits and people know that it's not right. And I think that is the cause. I think everything flows from there. When you have a problem at the top and there seems to be a little void in leadership, I mean, it's hard to win in college football when everything goes right, and clearly not right up there. You can see it with the opt-outs, the transfers, just everything. It's not right now. And I don't think they're going to be very good on the field this year either. So that's going to even increase the whispers. Things are not good.
Yeah, just for comparison's sake, Ryan Day's contract was just extended through the end of the 2026 season. Even before that extension, it ran through 2023, and that was close enough that it was like Ohio State went, all right, let's get tack another 3 years on the end of that. And, you got to remember, Harbaugh is 0-5 against Ohio State. No one has ever gone 0-5 against Ohio State at Michigan. Even John Cooper didn't go 0-5 against Michigan. He tied one after 4 losses. So how many more of those can he afford? Is he still employable at Michigan if he's 0-6 against Ohio State, 0-7 against Ohio State, 0-8? If he doesn't win, that if they don't want to have him under contract for too much longer, so they have to pay an expensive buyout, if the idea is once you're 0-6 against Ohio State, you can't possibly keep coaching here. At what point does that become just an absolute millstone that he can't get off his neck and he it kind of does him in?
Yeah, you have to look back when you mentioned the Cooper years. Coop could not beat Michigan. That was obvious. But, they were a top 10, top 15 type team every year. And a lot of those years, they went into that game as the favorite and were looked at as the better team and still couldn't win. There's nobody in America right now that thinks Michigan is on a par with Ohio State. I'm not sure they're on par with Penn State right now, and I don't think they are. I think they're probably going to be a 5-3 this year, and it won't shock me if they're a 4-4 team this year. So the needle is, not only have they not done well in the past, I don't think the future looks all that good. And if they go 4-4 or 5-3 this year, I guess you could use the COVID as an excuse when you've got so much baggage behind you, and it's definitely not a program that's getting better. A couple of years ago, the famous 4th down play, if they get that call there, they're probably going to the playoffs that year. Well, they're not going to the playoffs this year, and they weren't close to last year. So I think the needle's pointing down. And to me, there are a lot of little things happening there, but the big thing is that contract. There's no way Alabama lets Nick Saban get to within 1 year of leaving nothing being done, or Dabo Swinney anywhere in America when there's a strong relationship between coach and the university, and something's wrong.
Well, you mentioned a couple of things earlier, kind of hinted at them here. I mean, let's run through because I don't think Ohio State fans really have a total sense for exactly what has happened in that program, especially over this last 4 to 6 months, say. Just a bunch of things that have just sort of suggested that things are just a little weird inside Schembechler Hall right now. I mean, both cornerback Ambry Thomas, wide receiver Nico Collins have opted out for this season. Offensive lineman Jalen Mayfield opted out and then opted back in. So, I mean, like Wyatt Davis and Sean Wade, he's out, he's in. Okay, that's fine. But both Collins and Thomas, both apparently staying opted out, and that's what it looks like right now. And, you don't want to make assumptions about a player's individual situation and the reasons behind that. And absolutely, there may be completely non-football related stuff going on there we don't know. But it's just, that to me has stood out like as a little strange on a team that's at least theoretically on the fringes of a national title hunt. Micah Parsons has opted out, but Pat Fryermuth came back in at Penn State. Penn State has not had multiple players opt out. You go through, and outside of like LSU, there have just not been very many of those top 10 kind of programs where you've got multiple players opting out.
Yeah, I think LSU, I think it counts because those kids all do have their rings. And I get that. With Jamar Chase, it makes all the sense in the world. I mean, he's going to be the top receiver off the board. He's an amazing talent. So I don't know that he helps himself by playing this year. Collins needed to have a big year this year. There are questions about, he's talented. He's really good, but he's not in the Jamar Chase class. He needed to play this year. Ambry Thomas is not Jeffrey Okudah. Those guys needed to play, and they're not. I don't know. I don't get that. The transfers, when you see 2020 kids transferring, that really gets your attention. I mean, how bad can they dislike it? How buried can they be in the depth chart right now? They haven't been there 10 minutes. So how can that be happening?
Yeah, that's we'll skip ahead to that one. This is what actually prompted me to make this the topic of the show today. Is for the second time, a 2020, a kid who just signed with Michigan less than a year ago, has already transferred. That was before they basically had any padded practices at the University of Michigan. 2 members of that class are already gone. One of them transferred over the summer to Rutgers. The other one is a 4-star linebacker from Maryland who just put his name in the portal this week. And, again, like, transfers happen. Okay, that's fine. Like, you'll have that. But 2 guys to transfer out before you even really have a full bore practice at your new school, that's weird. I mean, you don't really. When was the last time you had multiple guys transfer from an Ohio State recruiting class before the first season started? Like, you'll have like a one-off thing every once in a while, but a couple guys already, and there have been rumblings that there could be more on the way. Like that to me is just, even if it is you were buried on the depth chart, how bad is the talent evaluation there if someone is so buried on the depth chart before you get through one full practice that it's just such a hopeless cause, and you get 2 of them. If you want to chalk it up to that, like, even that doesn't say anything great.
I have no answer for you. It's weird. I think that's the right word. I mean, and if you look at the Harbaugh tenure, they were much better 2 or 3 years ago than they are now. It was not they were actually favored in Ohio Stadium, when they played that big game, the overtime game. Curtis Samuel ran it in. That was an even game all the way. The next year, the game was pretty well even until Barrett got hurt. They put Haskins in and kind of put him away in the end. But these were games. Now lately, you're just getting murdered. They're complete no-show, non-competes. And that's not what's supposed to happen in Michigan. I think when they were battling Ohio State and you get a crucial call goes against you down that determines the game, determines a playoff spot, I think you can live with that if you're Michigan. But when you're giving up 100 and some points in 2 years in a row, getting murdered, and I see no chance they're going to beat Ohio State this year, barring some Purdue or Iowa miracle falls apart. That's not good. And maybe that's why he has no contract extension. I think the needle's pointing down. I don't think it's pointing up like it should after, 5-6 years. His kids in the program, his program, he's put his stamp on the program. And I think we're seeing what his stamp is. And that's not a pretty sight for Michigan people.
Yeah, and some of the guys he's brought in who were kind of perceived as the saviors are now transferring out. I mean, one of the weirdest stories to me, and this did not get a ton of coverage, and I thought that was very odd. September 5th, Dylan McCaffrey, the quarterback for the program, his mother, Lisa, helped organize a protest urging the Big Ten to have a season this fall. September 5th, like Labor Day weekend, first weekend of the college football season for some of the schools. That was the same weekend Ohio State had their parent protest at the Horseshoe. I mean, less than a month ago. 11 days later, the same day the Big Ten announces it was going to be playing games this fall, McCaffrey opts out, announces he's going to be transferring. I mean, again, this is not crazy that a guy who might have been falling behind in the race for a starting job would transfer, but A, what the heck happened between September 5th and September 16th, where his mom is lobbying actively for a season, then he's immediately gone. And then with this being a free year in terms of eligibility for everyone, like you got nothing to lose in terms of sticking around. Like, what? Go ahead and play out the season and then transfer. I mean, there's just all this stuff that just doesn't make sense. It's just so strange.
Yeah, with the McCaffrey thing, I don't know what happened there, so I don't act like I do because I don't. I have no inside information on that. To me, it reads as though he, for some reason, whether he was wrong in how he saw the situation or whether they misled him, sure looks to me like he's going to be the starting quarterback this year. And then all of a sudden, Joe Milton is named the starter, and I think that just blew the kid away. And to me, that seems like the only reason that he would leave so abruptly is that he thought he was going to be one starting quarterback, and they named Joe Milton. And I think he said, I think there was a lack of trust, a breakdown there in some way. Now, and I agree with you. Joe Milton has a ton of talent. He's got a chance to be really, really good, but he also has a chance to fall on his face by halftime of the first game, and Dylan McCaffrey could be right in there. So again, it makes no sense, but and it goes right to your laundry list of a lot of things that don't make sense up there right
now. And you touched on how you think things might play out for them this fall, but again, this is a team that is now it's just Joe Milton and Cade McNamara at quarterback. That's not great depth in a year when injuries or a COVID case, and all of a sudden, like, boom, you're down to one scholarship quarterback for 3 weeks. I mean, that's potentially a big issue. And replacing 4 starters on the offensive line, don't have a lot of depth at receiver or in the defensive backfield. I mean, there's a long way to go till December 12th, but that does not sound like a program that's in great shape to come into Columbus.
No, I don't know that they're in great shape. If you just set the Ohio State game aside, count that as an automatic loss, I don't think they're in all that great shape for all the other games either. I could see a 4-4 season up there, and I see no chance that they do better than 5-3. I don't see any possible way they're going to go 6-2, 7-1, 8-0. I see no chance.
Well, last week really felt like the first.
Not going to make them happy.
No. Well, last week really felt like the first real week of the college football season. There was, the big upsets, the crazy comebacks, dramatic finishes. Bill, give us a couple games you're most interested in watching this weekend.
Well, you almost have to watch all of them anymore because it's crazy right now. The two that are really sticking out to me right now is, Texas this week going to play TCU. I think Texas has more talent. I loved when they hired Chris Ash, even though they gave up last week and they pulled that game totally out of their rear ends. And if you look at TCU, they lost a heartbreaker last week to Iowa State. They played pretty well. And Gary Patterson has owned Texas in the past 4 or 5 years. So will that continue? And if, Tom Herman, he got a pass last week because they pulled that game out. And winning, cures a lot of ills. Had they lost that game, it would have been unbelievable down there in Austin. So Texas is a better team to be able to beat TCU. And we'll see. That's a game to keep an eye on because if Gary Patterson beats them like he usually does, the eyes of Texas are going to be bloodshot, and it ain't going to be pretty down there in Austin. So that's one I'm looking at. And then I really like this Alabama team. And, it was kind of typical Alabama last week, blow somebody out in the first half, take your foot off the gas in the second half. But, I'm looking forward to seeing them this week against A&M, who really laid an egg last Vandy, and Jimbo's, makes more money than Bill Gates. And they expect big things down there, and they haven't gotten big things down there at all. So I think that's an important game too for Jimbo. If he gets the tar beat out of him 48-10 or something, there'll be a lot of rumbling down there, in A&M too. So to me, those are the two games this week I'm looking forward to, just to see how it affects, Tom Herman and Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, those are a couple of good ones because those are a couple of coaches in a state that spends a little time thinking about football that are not in real great spots right now. I would definitely rather be Jimbo Fisher with 7 years or whatever it is left on that mega contract than Tom Herman. But yeah, those are two guys not in super fantastic spots. One other good one this weekend, Alabama and Georgia, two teams that looked a little shaky for a while last week in week one. Again, Auburn against who they play? Auburn against
Kentucky.
Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky. Auburn against Kentucky and Georgia against Arkansas. Yeah, those were a couple of games that were closer for longer than you expected. So it'll be interesting to see how those two teams come out week 2. Bill has a new episode of the Gives in the Bank podcast, his recruiting podcast with Mark Givler. That one dropped yesterday. You can check that one out at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find that one. You can also find a new episode of Buckeye Weekly that Tony Gerderman and I dropped last night. That was previewing the Ohio State linebackers. We got to talk to Al Washington and a number of the veteran linebackers on Thursday. So we have full updates on all of that. You can find all of our podcasts there, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. Subscribe to them right there. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find them all. Subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating and review. We greatly appreciate all of that. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football, and we will talk to you Monday.